there's our speaker. That's always a good sign. Brother Parker, good to have you with us. If you want to unmute.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Yeah, good to see you.
See, and you have your library and I have mine. There you go. It's good to have you here.
I'm jealous of yours.
Do you know Brian Croteau?
I do not.
Okay, he's from let's see. Fred George Washington Lodge of Research and Peyton Randolph up here. He's also our district deputy this year, but he's a I think it's high school history teacher or college professor. He teaches history, and he has his library behind him. And most people have I can tell yours is real, but so many people have like a stock library for a background for Zoom. He has his actual library behind him, and he, no joke, actually has the Dewey Decimal System, and he has little tags on every single book. No. And when he did that, I'm like, well, I've got to one-up you. So I went and found a picture of the Library of Alexandria. And it was the only way I could compete. But he, no joke, uses the Dewey Decimal System on his own book. So that's
a little OCD. I'm not going that far.
He's not the only one.
What's that, Brian?
He's not the only one.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, okay. Can't quite see it.
I know I have the Graham Hancock collection right here.
Okay.
They're more grouped by category, but not any particular order.
Right. No. Well, I actually haven't. Let's see. Where's my? I actually have. There's some books there. I have bookshelves around me, but it's an office, not a library per se. So it's I have like 3 different bookshelves, but we're hoping to finish the renovation that I was promised 3 years ago, and I haven't gotten installed yet. It's revamping the office. When we bought this house, it's the dining room. So as you walk into the house, you go straight through to the living room, and then there's like a double door opening to the right, or to the left, and that's the dining room. And then there's a double door opening to the kitchen. So you can walk in the house and do a 45, go straight to the kitchen. Yeah. And we have a big kitchen, so we put the dining room table at the other half of the kitchen, so we have a free dining room. So I took out the chandelier and put in some track lighting, and I made this room my office because I'm centrally located in the house. So I'm not like shut off in a corner where the family needs something. I'm kind of here in the center of the house. But it's worked well. It's worked well, except I lost a whole lot of wall space because I got 2 big open doorways. So I don't have any of my I Love Me stuff hanging on the wall. I've got a box full of Masonic stuff I've never been able to hang on the wall. So I'm not quite happy with it, but it works. There is no substitute. I've tried to figure out, is there a way to have a wall to hang stuff on? I mean, it's like, we just seem to have too much.
I ask you, maybe the doors, are they like louver doors?
It's just open. It's just an open space. Yeah. And we did to test. In fact, I'll go and show you all since we're just all BS in here. You can see the open one here, the open space.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And then there's one over. Actually, you catch the edge of it. That's the edge of the doorway there, that way.
Yeah.
So I could probably do this. There. That's my son, and that's going to the kitchen. And that's going to the hallway.
Gotcha.
So there's my area.
It really is an open space. Yeah.
Well, so my wife and I were deciding, again, we were thinking about doing about renovating the office, and we thought, did we want another, do we want to block off the wall that's to the hallway to the front door? And we hung up some rather thin plywood, basically just tacked it to the door frame and left it there for 2 weeks. See what it would be like not being able to cut through there. And we all realized we hated it. We liked being able to see the front door from the kitchen. It was a nice way to test, would this work? Because that would have given me like 4 feet of wall space. And it just didn't work for us. So it was a nice temporary way to say, nah, that don't work at all. We like the openness. We like being able to cut through. So we stuck with that. But yeah, I thought about putting in doors and all.
Still nice space.
It is. It works out well. It is nice and located. So anyway, welcome to the Chris Douglas Show and my office and my it's MTV Cribs White Bread Edition, and it's good. All righty. I want to welcome, let's see, Brother DaCosta. Good to have you with us. you want to unmute and say hello. Okay, well, he finds his mute button. And Brother Douglas, what a nice name. Good to have you with us.
Fantastic name. Thank you. Thank you, brothers.
All right. You must be related. The glasses and all. Where are you hailing
I
from?
see it. I am from Farmington 151 in Michigan, where I'm currently the Worshipful Master. So
Excellent.
salutations.
Good to have you with us. And Brother DaCosta still hasn't been mute. Oh, he dropped. Oh no. We're at 10 o'clock already. I don't see any of my lodge brothers here. As I was mentioning earlier, we do have hopefully more of Virginia Research Lodge will be in attendance today because we scheduled an officers meeting. So Matt, you're familiar because you're in research lodges as well, aren't you, Matt?
Well, in North Carolina, we really don't have research lodges. It's really, well, funny story. Let me back up. North Carolina used to have a research lodge. It was the North Carolina Lodge of Research, number 666. So it was already off to a bad start. Yeah.
On purpose.
But it kicked around for about 30 years, and they would publish research papers, and there's actually a complete volume of their publications in the library at the House of the Temple in DC. But the lodge just kind of fell apart. They forgot their purpose for being, and they stopped doing the research, they stopped doing the work, and just kind of collapsed.
Oh, wow.
In a lot of jurisdictions, you can have a lodge of research that they don't get into the minutia of having to have stated communications and opening rituals and degrees and things like that. North Carolina is not set up that way. So if we have a lodge of research, we truly have to have a lodge, like a brick and mortar physical. Yeah. So I founded the North Carolina Masonic Research Society as kind of a way around that back in 2017. So we're
I thought you were driving to a point.
A loose band of brothers. It's not like a membership or anything like that. It's just
okay. Yeah, I took a drink because I thought you were riding to a point. You stopped talking. I was like,
your turn.
Well, I wanted to mention, first of all, on the 18th of February, you need to come back, and a brother will be giving a talk on J. Raymond Shute and all of the work he's done in North Carolina. And that name keeps coming up. So when someone volunteered to give a talk on that, I was like, oh, that's wonderful because we just did a paper. Yeah, it's Jason Hicks from Kentucky, I think, or Tennessee. But anyway, I've seen papers on J. Raymond Shute and all the lodges he helped bring about there in North Carolina. Well, I bring up the research lodge because, as you know, I think I mentioned it in our TO discussion that a research lodge and an observant lodge have a lot in common in that in Virginia, especially, we meet 4 times a year. We elect officers. We have a charter from the Grand Lodge. Our dues can be much lower. It's like $20. We do not make Masons. So it's only for research. You have to be a member of a regular lodge in Virginia or a Grand Lodge recognized, and you affiliate with us. So we elect all the officers. We have a modified warden certificate for the master. You just have to be able to open and close a lodge. And we do all the official things of opening and closing and everything, but we don't initiate candidates, and we only meet 4 times a year. Well, it's hard to have a kind of officer planning, and long-term planning if you're not meeting on a regular basis. Whereas in your blue lodge, you can just say, okay, Friday's the stated, Wednesday night we'll have school, and then the officers will have a meeting, so everybody's up to speed on what we're doing, in the lodge. Well, we only meet 4 times a year, and I drive up to Richmond myself, and that's like an hour and a half for me. It's about 3 hours for our current master. Other people have to drive from all over the state. We get there, we have about an hour to sit and, like we're doing here, just kind of talking with guys we haven't seen in months, and we go in and have the meeting, and then we come out afterwards, we have lunch, and we all sit down and talk and just do normal fun stuff. And it's like there is no opportunity for the officers to get together and discuss anything substantive at the meeting. So I've said we need to start having more online meetings. We have the forum. Let's just have it after one of our regular Zoom meetings. Since I'll be here, we'll already be set up for it. And that will get more of them to actually attend the Zoom meetings as well. Hello, everyone. This is Virginia Research Lodge number 1777's unstated meeting. My name is Chris Douglas. I am your host. I'm the senior warden of that lodge. And I'm going to go ahead and post in the chat our usual links for those of you who aren't already a member of everything. We have first our link to our Facebook group, and we'll republish all of our research papers, and then a link to our website where you find the papers as well as other interesting things. I just updated the website with all of the 5 research lodges in our state with their meetings for the year of 2023, if you want to attend in person. And then there is our YouTube channel where you can watch videos of meetings just like this one. And I'm behind the ball. I think I got about 3 that I need to go process and upload, but we have over 30 up there now. So there's plenty to go and watch of previous ones over the last 2 years. And then my email, if you want to sign up for our weekly research papers. I think most of you already signed up. But if you are on Facebook, please join us on Facebook and contact me directly through Messenger. That's how I manage most of our official business. But you can email me if you're not on Facebook, because it's easier for me to keep up with people on Facebook. Brother Clark is sleeping in front of the Mount Rushmore there. And good to have you with us, Brother Clark. How you doing?
Good to be here.
Okay. Your lighting's a little different. All we see is your face.
Yes.
Good to see you. All righty. And as I mentioned, we do plan to have an officers meeting after, and assuming we have people turn out. So I did ask a question last week that took half an hour, and that was a lot of fun. But I'm going to go straight to our speaker this time instead of having a question, just because we have this thing planned afterwards that I'm less than positive is going to come off. But we're going to hope for that. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I think I made a point to say hi to everybody, I guess. But I do want to welcome Brother Matt Parker. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us where he's from briefly before his presentation. Matt, do you have a presentation you're going to be using? You're going to be sharing PowerPoint?
No slides. Just
slides. Just talking.
You just get to see my beautiful face. That's all.
Fair enough. Well, that's worth the price of admission alone. Don't tell them
For the freak show.
Worth every penny. Yes. Now, Matt, I will say that as a bit of an introduction, last January, I had the privilege of having a Zoom meeting like this one of our traditional observant lodges across the country. We had people from Ohio, I think, and West Virginia and Tennessee and North Carolina. And Brother Parker was one of our panelists who attended, and I asked him to come back and give a talk on his own about things. But I will say that I took the 2-hour meeting we had about the observant lodges and distilled it down to a 20-minute paper just to give the highlights. And I give that talk at Great Bridge Lodge in November, and I got exactly the reaction I wanted, because I had a brother call me afterwards and said several older Masons in front of me were clutching the pearls and saying, "Oh my God, that's not Masonry. You can't possibly suggest that." So it was wonderful. I had exactly the effect I wanted, which is to make people think and say, maybe we don't have to do things the way we're doing them. And I will be giving that same talk because I was asked to speak in Norfolk number 1, which is our oldest lodge. It's in my district here in Norfolk. Well, I'm Virginia Beach, but close enough for those who aren't from this area. I'll be speaking to Norfolk number 1 in February at their stated, and I'm going to give this. I decided I'm just going to give the same talk there because I want people in my district to hear it as well. So that should be an interesting time and should stir some things up. So I just want to let you know I'm spreading the word about observant lodges. And one thing I will say is I did at the end of the meeting, and I'll do the same in Norfolk. We had the chain of union at the end because I talked about how it doesn't take much to experiment or dabble with observant lodge theory. And the simplest thing you could do is just have a chain of union. Since in Virginia we have the closing charge and everyone gathers at the end of a Master Masons meeting around the altar, I asked the master's permission. I'm going to do the same thing in Norfolk. And I said, anybody who's in Scottish Rite already knows how to do this. So we're going to form the Cheney Union during the closing charge. And we did. They actually, most of us loosely, we weren't a full circle. We were like a group here, group there, but we tried. And several people said that was pretty cool. And as I said before we did that, I said, and now you'll be able to tell all of your friends that you attended an observant lodge. So I think that will be, I think that would that's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll do that again in Norfolk. So we'll see how that goes. And if you don't ever see me again, then you know that the Grand Lodge wasn't happy with what I did and pay the price. Anyhow, but with no further ado, I'm going to present Brother Matt Parker.
Well, thank you. And Brother Christopher, you're always welcome in North Carolina if the Grand Lodge of Virginia gets tired of you.
I'm not that far. I'm near the border here. I'm in
you're not far at all.
Beach. Okay.
But yeah, that's
Andrew Hammer had to do it. So if I have to move in the other direction, that's what I'll have to do.
Well, I think that's a phenomenal presentation to give because I'm a firm believer in traditional observant masonry. It's something that, I think we've gotten away from. We're going through a Masonic Renaissance right now. And this is great that you brought this up because I think we can tie this into my presentation today. We've lost track of what masonry is supposed to be over the last century. Prior to really World War I, actually, you could even go prior to Civil War. Masonry was very different than what we see today. And masonry, as with a lot of fraternal organizations, the membership is shrinking dramatically. Now, I am not panicked over that whatsoever. I refer to the Masonic Renaissance quite a bit, and I've had brothers say, how can you call it a Renaissance? We're losing members, we're shrinking. And I point out that Renaissance doesn't mean growth. It means rebirth. And that's what we're getting back to, is get back to the basics. Masonry was never meant to be a huge fraternal organization like it is now, having pancake breakfasts and green beans at dinner and all the little charity fundraisers and things that we do, which are great. And I encourage that, I promote that, but that's not the heart of masonry. So I think we're seeing a return or a revival of what masonry was prior to all of these little bubbles we've had throughout history where we've had this influx of membership. And, hindsight being 2020, it was very naive for brothers to assume that those large numbers would continue forever. So what do? We built nice lodge buildings all over the place, 2 or 3 in each town in some cases. And now they can't keep the lights on. Lodges are losing their charter. They're folding. And now they're stuck with this real estate. Grand lodges are saying, what are we going to do with these buildings? So maybe that was a little naive for us to really jump head first into those kind of real property investments and those types of things. We should have really kept to the basics the whole time. And I think you're going to see a return to that. And in fact, I'd say in about 20 years, you'll probably see a lot less Masonic edifices. You'll see lodges renting spaces or using, maybe a room in church or something like that. You're going to find that return to what we used to be. I think that really ties into what I was going to talk with you today about is ego and the false self. And we're really going to dive into what is the genesis of our Masonic degrees and our rituals. What are they really trying to show us? We've all heard that Masonry reveals and conceals. So everything in our degrees, everything in our rituals seems very superficial. Those obligations you take on the Holy Bible or whatever your volume of sacred law is on the altar, they seem kind of common sense. You knew that stuff before you walked in that door, didn't you? It was nothing earth-shattering. So I'll just start out by giving you this challenge. Go back through your catechisms, go back through your degrees and omit the obligations. Just focus on all the stuff around the obligations because that's where the cool stuff is. That's the stuff that we're kind of told to overlook. We need to focus on the obligation. Well, the obligation is not the most important part there. That should be something you're aware of, common sense to you anyway. That should already be in your heart. So let's start with the preparation room, where a candidate is first prepared. And during this presentation, I love for it to be interactive. So if you want to unmute and answer a question or jump in there with a comment or observation, please do. That just makes the presentation that much more interesting for everyone. So I'll ask you this. How were you prepared before you were initiated as an entered apprentice? But how were you physically prepared in the preparation room? You've never been in a Masonic lodge, you have not been initiated, and they take you in this preparation room and say, okay, get rid of your clothes. I mean, how are you prepared?
So at that point, I was rendered helpless. I was just asked, will you make me a Mason? Was the question I first asked them. I did not have a way, honestly, to had prepared for such a thing.
You kind of hit on where I'm going there. So when I ask, how are you prepared? Yeah, I'm talking about how are you physically prepared? You were told to get rid of the clothes you walked in with, right? You're put into some old rags, old pajamas. Any jewelry, minerals, metals, right? So the minerals would be your clothing, metals, watches, glasses, rings, piercings, at least visible, have to go. You leave that in the preparation room. And why is that? Why is that so important? So there's a part of the degree later, and it depends on the jurisdiction. In North Carolina, it's the Worshipful Master. In some jurisdictions, it's the Senior Deacon that asks the candidate to deposit something of a metallic kind, something of intrinsic value. And he's told that that should be a lesson to him, that should he ever encounter a brother in like condition, he's supposed to contribute to his relief. And that sounds great. But that goes back to what I was saying about something revealing and concealing. We have to look a little deeper. Why are we divested of the minerals and metals? Why does that stay in the preparation room? What do the minerals and metals represent? There's something symbolic there.
You're leaving your old self behind. You're joining something new, and you leave just like every day when I go into lodge. I attended lodge in Okinawa shortly after I was raised. I was in the Marines. I got sent to Okinawa, and I sat in lodge as a Lance Corporal with colonels, majors, sergeant majors, master chiefs. I don't even know everybody's rank, but I'm just this little old Lance Corporal, 21 years old. I'm sitting in lodge with guys that I would not be allowed to speak to unless they spoke to me first in the real world. But we're on the level there. So I was leaving the outside world with all its trappings and all of its rules and structure and entering something completely different where I was an equal with everybody else.
That's exactly right. So those minerals and metals represent your attachment to the material world, to the physical world. And why is that not allowed in the lodge? Because the lodge is a sacred space. You are entering a different realm. You are entering a sacred space. So those attachments to the outside world, as we say in our closing charge, I think it's the same one you use in Virginia, the concerns and employments. We leave all that stuff behind. It has no space there. If I had my way, there would be no clocks in lodge rooms, honestly, because I think it's a place that's separate from time and space that we're accustomed to. Your concerns, your problems, whatever you're dealing with, that's going to be waiting for you outside. Don't bring it into the lodge room with you. We say that you are not to bring anything offensive or defensive into a lodge. And what's that referring to? Is that referring to a weapon? Or is it referring to you? Should we be leaving those things that are offensive to that sacred space? Should we be leaving those outside the lodge room? To me, that's what that means.
Excuse me, Brother Parker. I don't know if in your jurisdiction, but I actually went through a chamber of reflection in my preparation, and that pretty much, melted my brain out my ears because, like you meet the brothers and you're like, okay, I'm going to go get initiated today, and then, I walked into like this. I'm like, what, what's going on? And that really set the tone for me. Like I wouldn't say I wasn't ready for that, but that really got the wheels spinning. That it's going to be a different type of experience. It was good, but yeah, I don't know if that's something they do in North Carolina, but it was definitely interesting.
Several lodges do that, and it's growing in popularity. I'm trying to get my lodge on board for doing that. I'm the worshipful master of the lodge. I could say, hey, we're going to start doing this, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to cram it down their throat. I want them to come to the realization organically that, hey, this is a good thing. So I'm just trying to persuade them to do that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I've seen brothers come out of chamber reflections in tears. I've seen them come out shaking. We do an exercise. We have a program in North Carolina called the Middle Chamber Program. And it's really a deep dive into the more esoteric meanings of our degrees, really digging deep into our symbolism and allegories. But we have a capstone program called the Inner Chamber. And that is conducted by Brother Chuck Dunning, author of Contemplative Masonry. He comes up from Texas every year. We do that program. In fact, we just did it last weekend. And we set up a lodge room with all the officer stations. It's just candlelight, really, other than just the altar light over the Bible. And we put the brother in a chamber reflection for 10 minutes. Take him out of the chamber reflection and escort him to the lodge room. He goes into the lodge by himself. And he's just instructed to go to each of the 3 principal officers and have a conversation with those officers. Now, in reality, we know he's having a conversation with himself, right? But it's amazing the reaction. We have brothers that come out of that lodge room in tears. We tell them we give them 10 minutes in the lodge room. And a lot of them are coming out after 5 or 6 minutes, just shaking in tears. And at first, they don't want to talk about their experience, but then after they process it, they'll talk about it and say, this is what I realized about myself. This is the discovery I made. And these are always answers that are already in here. It's nothing earth shattering. It's not like some bodiless voice speaking to them from above. It's right here. We had a brother last year go through the program, and I didn't know anything about his background. And he came out in tears, just very solemn, really didn't want to talk at first. And he told me later, he said that his daughter had died of a drug overdose a few years prior. In the last few years, he and his daughter were not close at all. And he carried a lot of guilt about that. And he said that when he was in that lodge room, he had a conversation with his daughter. And I don't know exactly what transpired, but he came out and he said, my daughter's at peace. He said, I know she doesn't want me to feel guilt. He said, I know she loved me and I love her. And he said, I don't feel guilty anymore. It was very transformative because he had to have that conversation with himself. So you're right, chamber reflection, some kind of exercise like that is so important to center ourselves and ask ourselves those questions. But when it comes to Masonry and taking that back to the lodge experience, shouldn't we be treating every lodge as if it were a chamber of reflection? I mean, think about that. If you're in the lodge with your brothers and you're all of one accord and you're all in that contemplative mindset, shouldn't you all be experiencing that? Maybe not to that extent. I think you get more of an effect being by yourself, but in general, you have that energy, you have that egregore with the brothers in your room in that lodge with you. But it is a sacred space. It needs to be treated like a sacred space. We've lost that. So let's go back to the title of the presentation, Ego and the False Self. So when I talk about ego, I'm not speaking about it in the clinical terms such as Freud or Jung. Freud and Jung's definition of ego was a little different. But I'm going to refer to it in the way that we've pretty much come to know it in the 20th and 21st century where we talk about someone having an overinflated ego or a big head, or, you know, they're just so stuck up or full of themselves. We all know people like that, right? And the ego is not a bad thing. We have an ego for a reason. God gave us an ego to use as a tool. And it is, to a degree, a defense mechanism. But we have become, as a society, really, gotten to the point where we use the ego more than we should. We give it free rein, and we just follow along wherever the ego goes. So, you know, have any of you ever had a dog that just refused to walk with you on a leash? He was just going to drag you wherever he wanted to go, right? Now, do you sit there and try to pull the dog back, or do you just follow along? Right, you're going to try to pull that dog back. You're going to try to restrain him a little bit. I know this because I have a 1-year-old boxer that we're still working on that. It's a nightmare. But I can't just follow him where he wants to go, because we'll end up in traffic, right? So that's what we do with the ego. We let the ego just run amok, and then we just follow behind it. We go through our waking lives every day wearing masks. I don't know if you've ever thought about this before, and the idea of wearing masks is a very Eastern mysticism, Eastern philosophy. But I think it really applies to what we do. So when you wake up in the morning, you've already put on a mask, whether you realize it or not. When you go to work, you're wearing that work mask, whatever your profession is. I work in the legal profession, so I've got that face on. When I'm around my friends, I have a different face on, or a different mask. When I'm in a lodge with my brothers, that's a different mask. When I'm around my family, that's a different mask. Even when I'm by myself, I'm wearing a mask. We all are. The mask, or the ego, is what we project into the world, what we want the world to see. In fact, there are only 2 times where you are not wearing a mask. Does anybody want to take a swing at when those 2 times are? And I'll take birth and death off the table. It's not that.
When you're asleep.
That's one. But the second time is a time called the hypnagogic state. And most of us have never heard that word, but you've experienced it. The hypnagogic state is a state that you can enter into through prayer, meditation, just deep thought, where you lose all sense of the environment around you. You lose all sense of time. You're just so deep within yourself and within thought that the ego doesn't even have a chance to be a part of that. I'll give you an example. You leave your home to go to lodge. And the next thing you know, you're in deep thought. Next thing you know, you've arrived at the lodge. But you don't remember anything about that trip. It just flew by. 1 second, you're getting in the car. Next second, you're sitting in the parking lot. How did that happen? Was that magic? Was it like some Star Trek stuff where you were just transported there? No, you were just that is the hypnagogic state. That's the closest example I can give you. So we've all experienced that. We all experience that very regularly. But we need to spend more time in that state, because that's where we discover who we really are. That's when we discover the answers. Why is it that we love to go down the road, driving down 95 with our windows down, music blaring? Or why do we have to have the radio on in the background, or television on in the background, or just have this general noise going on? We're not paying attention to it. Why do we have to have that? I think the reason why we do that with the background noise is to drown out our own thoughts. We're afraid to be alone with ourselves. That can be a very scary place. So, Brother Douglas, going back to the chamber of reflection, that's exactly what that is. You're alone with yourself, and that can be a terrifying place to be. You can experience some really great things. You can also experience some things that are disturbing. You will realize things about yourself you've never thought of before. You will see things in yourself that maybe this is a good thing. I've never seen this in myself. Or, hey, I never knew I was such a, excuse my French, I never knew I was such an asshole. Right? Now, again, I work in the legal field. That's 50% of my job. But am I really that person? Is that who I am? And we don't realize those things until we take the time to explore and ask the questions and meditate on that. So you can set up a chamber of reflection in your own home. Most men refer to that as a bathroom. But you just find a place where you can just spend about 10, 15 minutes yourself just thinking in quiet. And if you have families and kids, that gets a little hard. You might want to go out to the car and close yourself off in there, go somewhere where you can just spend some time thinking. Or if you're close enough to the lodge, just go to the lodge when no one else is there. That to me is an ideal place because I like to meditate on the ritual. I like to meditate on our degrees, the symbolism, especially the symbolism. And I'll hit on that in just a minute. But the more time we spend in that hypnagogic state, the more time we really can connect with ourselves. Now, what is the hypnagogic state? What is the true self? So we have some Scottish Rite and York Rite Masons here, correct? Is there anyone here who's not Scottish Rite or York Rite? Okay, I'm going to tell you without giving too much away, the Royal Arch degree. The Royal Arch degree, I think, is one of the most phenomenal degrees in Masonry. I wish it were a Blue Lodge degree because it really hits on something very important that, again, most Scottish Rite or York Rite Masons, there's a version of the Royal Arch degree in both Scottish Rite and York Rite, so they're very similar. Basically, Albert Pike took the York Rite Royal Arch degree and just kind of tweaked it for Scottish Rite. But in that degree, basically, there are archways discovered under King Solomon's temple. And as the knights explore deeper and deeper into the temple, they arrive at the lowest arch, the ninth arch, and find the Ark of the Covenant. But on top of that is a plate with the name of God engraved on there. That is allegory. What does that really represent? We refer to the name of God, the ineffable name of God, all the time. And this is just my thoughts on this. I'm not saying I'm right. But I've thought about that. Why would God need a name? Any name that God has would be given to him by man. He existed way before us. He had no beginning. What purpose did he have with a name? Who named him? The ineffable name of God refers to something a little deeper, something that really can't be explained. And that is the true self, the spirit within us. The spirit or soul, that's what communicates with deity. That's our connection to deity. So I think when we are in that hypnagogic state or prayer, we're communing with that true self. We're getting closer and closer in there. So every Masonic lodge is emblematic of the Temple of Solomon. But let's think about the Temple of Solomon. And let's go to the Fellowcraft degree. In that degree, you arrive at the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple. Where are you standing physically in the lodge at that point? You're on the west side of the altar facing the Worshipful Master in the east, correct? Okay. At what Masonic degree do we ever reach the inner chamber? We don't. The Sanctum Sanctorum, the Holy of Holies. Now, think about this. What separates the middle chamber from the inner chamber? Is it a big metal door? Is it a wooden door? Is it a line of guards there with swords and shields. What's separating the two? Well, I just gave it away. What separates the inner chamber from the middle chamber? It's just a thin veil, right? Just a thin veil. So what is a veil? It's just fabric. Air can pass right through it. So in other words, looking at ourselves, there's really not that much separating us from the true self. The ego is the veil. We just have to go through that veil to discover our true selves. And we spend so much time standing in the middle chamber just staring at this veil and never looking beyond it, never getting in touch with the true self. I think we as Masons understand that, it's a little more than that, that we can communicate with the true self. We can get glimpses of the true self. And the more time that we spend with ourselves in that meditation or in that contemplation or prayer, the more we start to see pieces of the bigger picture. We start to see a more developed composition of who we are. But we have to set the ego aside. You see, we live in a society where we have very polarized opposites. And I'm a big fan of duality. You can't have hot without cold. You can't have dark without light. Everything is duality. But we live in a society where everyone is so polarized, so convinced that they're right and you're wrong, that now we have, the cancel culture and everything else is going on where, Brother Christopher, I don't want to hear your opinion because your opinion is going to conflict with what my core beliefs are. And if I listen to you, if I allow you to continue to speak, then you just might change my mind. And I'll be damned if that's going to happen. Right?
That's right. That's right.
Right.
I
So we
can't help
just
it if you
shut
also-
people down before we even hear them. That's the
And
ego
the thing,
popping up there. There's that veil. Because there
It's
can be multiple truths. There can be truths on both sides. So, Brother Douglas, Brother Sorensen, Brother Smith, Brother Gordon, I want to hear what you have to say. It doesn't mean I have to agree with you. But maybe by having that conversation with you, I'm going to understand your point of view. I'm going to understand where you're coming from. And maybe that might influence the way I think of things. We live in a society where people are not willing to do that. They're so stuck in their ways there. And again, that's that ego that's pulling them back. It's that dog pulling them on the leash rather than them controlling the dog. And we allow our egos to take control of our working tools. That's the reason why I love masonry, because we use stonemason tools and stonemasonry as a great allegory. We know that before we had organized speculative lodges, these types of conversations were going on in the operative lodges. They had the working tools there. There was no accident that it evolved into the speculative masonry that we have today. They were looking at these tools and they're saying, we're building more than buildings. We can apply these tools toward ourselves because we have our internal working tools. So it can be, stepping outside the box or stepping out of your comfort zone. That's exactly right. So here we have just the common gavel, probably most recognizable working tool in masonry. Now, if you were to give this gavel to your ego or to an apprentice, you're working on a temple, you hand the gavel to an apprentice and you say, here you go for it. I'm going to go get some drinks for the guys. I'll be back later. You'll be fine. What's going to happen? Are you going to come back and find a masterpiece or a work of beauty? Or are you going to find chaos and destruction? But that's what we do, right? Every day we hand off our working tool to the ego and let that take over. And then we expect there's going to be perfection. There's going to be beauty. And it never is. But if we take the time to set the ego to the side and become more involved with ourselves, and more especially communicate with deity and communicate with spirit, you have a much greater chance of achieving your goals. You have a much greater chance of creating something of beauty, of creating lasting relationships, of making the right decisions without the danger of causing destruction and chaos everywhere you go. I love the is it Allstate commercials that have mayhem? The guy, yeah, we all know people just like that. Everywhere they go, everything they do, they just leave a wake of destruction and misery everywhere. And they are completely oblivious to it. And they can't understand, why is this person upset with me? What did I do? Why did this blow up in my face? So we've all been there to some degree. Some people go through their whole lives like that. And I kind of enjoy sitting back, making a little popcorn, watching it happen. It's fun. But we can mitigate that. We can mitigate that by spending more time talking to ourselves, spending more time understanding the ego, because again, the ego is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a tool that God gave us, but we have to use it accordingly. We can't use it the way we're using it now. So I'll give you an example. So how many on here, just show of hands, how many of you are either current masters or past masters? Yeah. Okay. Anybody on here past grandmaster or grandmaster? No. Okay. Because I have given this presentation where I've had grandmasters present too, or past grandmasters. When I refer to a brother, outside of the lodge, I always refer to him as just brother. Even if they're grandmaster or past grandmaster, outside the lodge, I just call him brother. Why? We're all on the same level. But we forget that. As Masons, the dichotomy is that we get so hung up in titles and the pomp and circumstance that we forget that we're all the same. And that is the reason why it's so important for me as a reminder to myself. If I encounter the Grand Master on the street tomorrow, he's just Brother Kevin to me, the Grand Master of North Carolina. If I run into the Worshipful Master of the Lodge, in the lodge meeting, during a tiled meeting, I will refer to him as Worshipful because that is showing respect to the office. But outside of that, he's just brother to me. The reason why I bring that up is because we all know brothers, if you introduce yourself, or if you call them brother, they'll correct you and say, oh, it's Worshipful brother. Really? That's an ego. They need that. They need that attention. They need that validation. And that's okay. Maybe they're missing that validation somewhere in their lives and they need that. And that's okay. I'm not trying to offend them. And if they insist on that, sure, I apologize. Worshipful. Because I understand there's something missing there where they think they need that. Or it could be that they've just never learned to subdue their passions, control that ego. In your Entered Apprentice Catechism, you're told that you are to learn to subdue your passions and improve yourself in Masonry. No one ever stops to ask at that point, what is Masonry? You're to improve yourself in Masonry. I actually asked, when I was an Entered Apprentice, I actually asked that question. What does it mean to improve yourself in Masonry? And my coach told me, oh, that means you're supposed to learn the ritual and learn the degrees. And no, that's not what it means. I believed him at that time, but I know now that's not what that means. We have to really dig into, it's right there in our lectures. Our lectures tell us what Masonry is. And we need to get back to that. Masonry is a very contemplative practice. It is a very, this is going to sound wrong, and I apologize. It's a very, I don't want to say selfish, but it is about you. It is about you as the individual. So we're a brotherhood. We're joined together through that. However, the priority is on you. making yourself better, because you cannot possibly hope to make the world around you better if you haven't worked on this first. So it is a little bit of a selfish motivation in Masonry, but that's not a bad thing. And so that's the reason why I say, I hate to use the word selfish, but
Matt,
yes.
if I could inject something,
Right.
the constant refrain of what is Masonry? What is Masonry all about? What's our motto? Masonry, we make good men better. Oh, everybody applauds that. We make good men better. That's a great slogan. We make good men better. How do we do that? I mean, the whole point is, I am a Mason. I'm a man. I need to be better. What am I doing to make myself better? What is Kurt doing to make himself better? What is Vernon doing to make himself better? What are we doing to help every other brother around us, to give them direction on how they can make themselves better? Because we're all in. We are all Masonry. So we all should be constantly trying to make ourselves better. So no, it's not selfish, but the work we're doing is on you and you and you and you and you. The work we're doing is on every single one of us all of the time. We are all working on improving you, but each one of us is the you, and we need to be constantly doing that. So yes, it is about you, but in no way is it selfish. This is what you came here to do. This is why you came to us, to be a better man. So if you're not working on breaking off those rough edges, you're not doing Masonry. You're supposed to be improving yourself. And if we're all doing it at the same time, then we're making our organization better, making our lodges better, and then we can go and make the work better.
And that's exactly the reason why I said I hate to use the word selfish. I mean, it's just a way of saying that we have to focus on ourselves to make ourselves better, but we're also encouraging our brothers to do that as well. But we are doing it through prayer, meditation, study, pick up some books, read, learn, and it doesn't have to be about Masonry. Read about another religion, read about another culture, read about history, find out why people did the things they did, or why people do the things they do. I love sociology. Why did societies do the things they do? Why are their cultures so different? And there are beautiful things out there when you really take the time to explore that. But the important thing is you are learning more about yourself when you do that. You're expanding your mind. Isn't that what the fellowcraft degree is all about? Is pursuing knowledge, growing as a person. You cannot improve without growth. And you cannot grow without learning. And that's the key. That's the point right there to the fellowcraft degree.
But Matt, I don't understand. I've got my Master Mason's degree. I'm done. They made me better. I'm a Master Mason. I'm done.
Are any of us really Master Masons? I love this. I've stopped saying this. I'm going to say it to this group, but I have stopped saying this because I have ticked off so many lodges by saying this. I thought they were going to run me out with torches and pitchforks like a Frankenstein movie. I've said, how many in here are Master Masons? Of course, I know they're all Master Masons. Every single hand goes up. I said, are you really? I said, we're all really entered apprentices. I said, Master Mason is what we aspire to be. The fellowcraft is what we aspire to be. We're really just, at the end of the day, we're all entered apprentices. Now, the ego is what tells them, no, you're wrong. I'm a Master Mason, right? If you think about it, Master Mason is that perfection, that perfect ashlar. And that's what we are aspiring to. So if you think, I wish I had some squaring compasses with me, and I don't. But if you think about the squaring compasses, here we have the entered apprentice where the points of the compasses are concealed, right? Now, do we spend more time in that world? We spend a lot of time in this world. Here's the Master Mason world. We like to think we spend a lot of time there. We really don't spend a lot of time there. Spend maybe a little time in the fellowcraft world. But it's that entered apprentice world where we spend probably 90% of our lives running around like chickens with our head cut off, the old Southern saying, And maybe we need to spend a little more time in the fellowcraft world. I think the fellowcraft world is the linchpin there. That is the key. We can't possibly get a glimpse of the Master Mason world without that fellowcraft. I'll go back to the gavel. So we talk about our working tools in very glowing terms. This is an instrument made use of by operative masons to break off the corners of rough stones, better fit them to the builder's use. But we as free and accepted masons are taught to make use of it for a more noble and glorious purpose, right? This is the greatest thing in the world. At what point do we ever talk about the negative side of the working tools, the dark side? Remember, I mentioned duality earlier. There's two sides to everything. At what point do they tell you that this same gavel that can create the perfect ashlar could also crack that ashlar right down the middle? We never say that, do we? But think about it. It's true. And you can apply that analogy to any of our working tools. If you don't use your level when building a foundation, what's going to happen? If you don't use a plumb when you're building that wall, what's going to happen? They're internal, they're symbolic. But when we hand the working tools off, again, we hand them off to the ego, what are we going to expect? They're not going to use them properly. They're going to destroy that perfect ashlar that you've worked so hard on. And we talk about the temple, forming the temple. Is the temple made up of one ashlar? Or is it made up of thousands?
Thousands.
Thousands. And so I like to think of this. I think, in my personal opinion, it's a fallacy when we say building the perfect ashlar as if it's just one. We spend our lives working on thousands of ashlars that we're trying to perfect. So you want to stop smoking, that's one ashlar. You want to lose weight, that's one ashlar. You want to go back to school and finish your degree, that's an ashlar. You want to be a better father, husband, employee, brother, son, whatever. Those are all ashlars, individual ashlars. And we continue to work on those ashlars throughout our lives. We continue to gather new ashlars as we progress. But we are working on building that building. And if we are not spending the time working on those ashlars, if we are not taking the time applying our working tools as we should, what's the end result going to be? Think about the legacy of your life. What is that legacy going to be when you're no longer here? Is it going to be one of peace and beauty? Did you make the world a better place? Did you change someone's life for the better? Or did you cause chaos, destruction around you? So I encourage each of you, and sometime this weekend, just pick up a working tool in your hands so you have something tangible. And it could be the squaring compasses, it could be a gavel, it could be anything. Hold that item in your hand and just think on it. Just meditate on it. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to you personally? What does it tell you about yourself? Because I can tell you what it means to me, but it may be something very different from you. We're all individuals. And it's just like Brother Christopher said, we're encouraging each other. But we also have to realize that each of us are on our own paths as well. And you can't judge another man, or especially another brother, by the path he's on, because he's on what's his path. And maybe he's not meant to be where you are right now. Or maybe you're not meant to be where he is right now. And that is fine. But you encourage each other on whatever paths you're on. And that is how you make good men better. That is Masonry. So I'm happy to leave it there, and I'm happy to entertain any questions, comments, discussions, threats.
I'm interested in something. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go. I was just saying thank you, Brother Parker. Go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by the Chamber of Reflection, because we, a couple of brothers and I in our lodge came across that, started studying it, and we're trying to do a education video for a contest in Wisconsin. And one of the things in Wisconsin is the chamber of reflection is prohibited. And it looks like it goes back to the Morgan affair, when anything potentially looking a little scary, they tried to take out of masonry. But when you said that you've seen brothers come out of there in tears, I'm wondering if some of that comes to what they were asked to answer maybe on a paper, because I'm hearing could be something very basic like, why did you petition this lodge? What will you bring to it? What do you expect? But it could also be your philosophical and moral testament, which I'd have to have a little bit of time to think about rather than just sprung on me. But are there other things that you're seeing in there that got them to this state?
So when we place brothers in a chamber of reflection, we don't prompt them. We don't give them anything to specifically to set them off.
Do you give them paper and pen? Are they supposed to write something, or?
I've seen that done. I traditionally don't do that.
So you just have a room with the different symbols. There's nothing. They're not expected to write anything.
Right. I mean, some chambers of reflection go really overboard, and they'll have like a coffin in there and skull and crossbones. And if you're initiating a new interdependence and putting him in a chamber of reflection, what kind of message are you sending to him? He doesn't understand all this stuff. The most important thing in a chamber of reflection is a dark room. I personally like the use of a mirror so it helps to be able to look at your own reflection, especially when you're contemplating and thinking about yourself. There's your reflection. That is a constant reminder of why you're there. And then one candle, just for a little bit of light, ambient light. That's it. That's all you need for a chamber of reflection. You don't need the skulls. You don't need all the working tools. You don't need, in fact, there's a lodge in Colorado Springs, Colorado, Enlightenment 198. Their chamber of reflection, they used to have a live rooster in the chamber of reflection because the rooster represented the dawn and a new day. And what candidate is going to understand that? He's just going to try to avoid getting pecked by a rooster, right? They would just have all kinds of stuff in that preparation room, a coffin and a skull and all these weird things. And so then what happens is you've put a candidate in here, and he's so distracted by all this other stuff around him that he's not focusing on the reason why he's there himself.
That's true. Like, it seems like unless you understand the meaning of all those objects that are in the room, you're kind of missing the whole point of the exercise. So,
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to hop in, since we had one, and it was a fake rooster, and it was like a fake skull in the room, like with the candle when I did mine. And then we didn't have to write anything down, but it was essentially, like, why are you here? Why do you want to be a Mason? And for me internally, I saw the skull as like, this is my mortality. And then like, it was like literally like, for real, why am I here? Right. And it's like, I never contemplated that, like literally in my whole life, like, why do I exist? Why am I here? Why do I want to be here? I got my suit on, and then they just asked me that. It's like, man, that's heavy, right? And then that actually got the wheels turning. So, I mean, I felt like that's what the value was, because then when we go through and, I'm going to improve myself, like that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Because at the end, that skull, that's me. So, I got this much time. What am I going to do? And I mean, that's how I internalized it.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. I think that's a terrific way to look at it. And that's the way it should be. I mean, there are no skulls in masonry, right? But, going back, Brother Sorensen, what you were saying about Wisconsin, not allowing the chamber of reflection, thinking that goes back to, it really has nothing to do with the Morgan affair. Chamber of reflection actually originated in France, French masonry. And the Master Mason degree became standardized under the Grand Lodge, the premier Grand Lodge of England, around 1725. However, the second section, the Legend of Hiram Abiff, did not come about until the 1790s, so after the French Revolution. So what did they do before that second half? What they had brothers do was sit in a chamber of reflection and write out their last will and testament, which is really cool. So the second half of the third degree that we have now took the place of doing that. When I mentioned that I work in the legal profession, I actually am a paralegal for a law firm, and I handle estate administrations, and I also do a little bit of estate planning. And when you go to write your will, or even if you're, hiring an attorney to write your will, you cannot help but contemplate your mortality. So that was the reason why that was used as a tool in chambers of reflection in France, was it made you contemplate your mortality. And again, when we came up with the second half of the third degree, that just replaced that idea. And the idea of chamber of reflection was picked up by the Scottish Rite and used more there. But we are seeing a return to that in lodges. But Brother Sorensen, to your question, I tend not to prompt candidates at all. I don't want to plant any suggestion in their minds. I want it to be very organic, what they experience. They understand that it's a solemn affair. They understand that they are there to think, to contemplate. And if I give them any guidance whatsoever, it's this. I'll say, sit in here, think about what led you to where you are today. Not just petition join the lodge, just in general, in life. Why are you where you are today? Think about that. And random thoughts are going to fly through your head. That's fine. Just let them pass on through. Don't try to control your thoughts. If a thought comes through, let it go. That's fine. Because you're going to pick up bits and pieces. You're going to hear yourself in there. If you try to force the thought, if you try to give it parameters, you're going to miss it. You're going to completely miss it. And that really is the limit of the guidance I give them as far as going into a chamber of reflection. And it really, even if I give them that much guidance, most of the time I don't even give them that much. And I've seen them come out, they've lost all color in their face. They are, I've seen them, crying. I've seen all kinds of reactions. And I've had some very interesting experiences in a chamber of reflection myself that really caused me to kind of want to isolate for a little while. Didn't really want to socialize with anyone or be around other people, because I really wanted to think about what it was that I experienced, about what it was that maybe the little revelations that came to me, things that I've encountered. I was talking about that exercise where we put the brother in the lodge room to speak to the primary officers of the lodge. And I've done the exercise a few times myself, but the first time I did that exercise, it was very strange. I started with the junior warden station, Hiram Abiff, and just staring at this empty chair with the apron and the jewel draped on it. And after a minute or two, a thought started occurring to him. I asked a question. It was more one of those internal questions you really can't put into words. But the answer was very simple. The drawings are there on the trestle board. The plans are already there. They're on paper. But if you do not take action, that paper is just going to rot and blow away with the wind, all it is just paper right now. You need to take action to make that come to fruition. That was what occurred to me as I'm staying there looking at this junior warden station. So then I move over to the senior warden station. I'm just staring at this chair, staring at this jewel and apron. And again, another thought kind of occurred to me. It says, you have all the tools that you need. You have all the materials you need. You just need to put in the work. You need to do it. You don't have to ask, for help. You don't have to get anything else. You already have everything you need for happiness, to be successful, to be the man you want to be. You just need to do the work, put it together. Thought, okay, sounds pretty good. So I go over to the Worshipful Master Station, King Solomon. I'm staring at this chair, nothing, absolutely nothing, absolutely nothing. Then the weirdest thing happened. I audibly heard a voice say, "Brother Senior Deacon, escort him back to the senior warden in the West." And then I'm thinking, okay, or excuse me, Senior Deacon. So I said, okay. So I walked back to the senior warden in the West, and it's almost like the conversation picked right back up with, hey, these are your ashlars. These are your tools. This is how you use this gavel. This is all these instructions are just kind of occurring to me. The weird part was it was only the worshipful master and these where I actually heard an audible voice, which I know was in my head, but still, I guess I was in the moment. But then I started thinking about it later, what each of those officers represent, because that was not in my head when I was sitting there. But the junior warden in the South was telling me about the designs on the trestle board. And then it occurred to me, oh, that's Hiram Abiff. He's the architect. He's the designer of the building. Then the senior warden in the West, Hiram, King of Tyre. All of the materials, the stones, the timbers, everything, even the workmen, all of that came from Tyre or from Lebanon. The builders that built the temple were Phoenician, not Hebrew. So I thought that was interesting that it was specifically this officer telling me this. And then I thought about the senior deacon. What is the role of the senior deacon? Well, in a degree, he's the one that escorts the candidate around the lodge room, right? He's the one you put your trust in. He's not going to let you get hurt. Senior deacon is your conscience, your guide here, your Jiminy Cricket. That's your senior deacon. And we always have that senior deacon with us wherever we go. We choose not to listen to it. The senior deacon will never steer you wrong. He will not lead you into danger. The ego is the one that will do that. And so that occurred to me after that exercise, what these officers were, what their roles were. And it was just a very profound experience for me. But again, there was no prompting that went into that. It was, okay, here you go into the lodge room, and that was it.
So that I missed on your first time around. I thought you're actually having a conversation with the current officers.
That's what I thought too. That's what I was going to ask.
Oh, no. When I say empty lodge room, I mean empty lodge room. Nobody's in there.
And they tell you, go have a conversation with 3 station officers. That's the only
That's it.
direction you're getting. Wow.
That's
And
it.
you say there's a brother from Texas who comes up to host this program? Okay.
Chuck Dunning. He is the author of Contemplative Masonry. He has a follow-up book called The Contemplative Lodge.
But does he explain how to set it up? And I mean, doesn't sound like there's much to do other than tell you, here's how you set it up and do it. Or does he give some explanation?
He doesn't. So the exercise.
It's sort of like, I'm sorry, just if it sounds, I don't know how it sounds, but do you need him to be there to do this, or is this something you can simply read and follow the directions? That's what I was kind of getting at. He's not.
Yes, you can. You can.
Okay.
Pick up his books. His books are they're very deep. They're very philosophical, but he also puts an element of practicality into it. So here's the idea, here's the philosophy. Now here's an exercise you can do to actually put this into action.
Okay.
So he is very good about doing that. Just a phenomenal instructor.
Okay.
He is his background is in psychology, and he is a therapist, or not therapist, excuse me, a counselor at Texas Christian University down in Houston, or excuse me, Dallas. He lives in Fort Worth, but yeah, just an incredible guy. I mean, I would highly recommend, having him on here at some point.
Yes.
He's just phenomenal. I've known Chuck since about 2016, but and he's really the one that opened my eyes to a lot of this stuff. I was at a point at that time where I was ready to leave my lodge and just demit from Masonry completely, because what I saw was very poor ritual in the lodge that I was raised in. Brothers coming in, wearing, ragged shorts and wrinkled t-shirts that look like they just picked them up off the bedroom floor, and just no respect for the lodge at all. They just went through the motions with the ritual. They talked about fundraisers. They talked about, putting new gravel in the parking lot, or who's going to change this light bulb over here. Just, that was it. That was it. And I thought, this is not what Masonry is. In fact, this is going to sound really funny, but this is absolutely true. I started doing some research online to see if I had joined a clandestine lodge. I really did. I was not sure I had actually joined the real Masons.
Wow.
And then when I realized I had, I was so utterly disappointed. So I absolutely believe in, divine providence. When you're ready, well, what's the old saying? When the student is ready, the master appears, or something like that. The teacher appears. Yeah. So in 2016, I met, and now our past Grand Master, but at that time he was the senior Grand Warden, Sean Bradshaw here in North Carolina. Met another gentleman, Ben Wallace, and through them I met Chuck Dunning, that I was just referring to, with Contemplative Masonry. And all of these men kind of appeared right about the same time. And they were all connected. They were all good friends. And I started discovering this other world of Masonry that I didn't know existed. No one had ever shown me this side of Masonry before. And I started to discover, okay, there is something here. And then I made the mistake that I think we've all made of asking all these questions, but never getting the answer. And it was finally, past Grandmaster Sean Bradshaw said, look, stop asking for other people to give you the answer, because you'll never get an answer. You have to find the answer for yourself. We can give you the tools to find the answers, but you have to do that work on your own. And I came to the realization that real Masonry takes place outside of the lodge. Real Masonry takes place in our day-to-day lives. Real Masonry takes place when we engage in meditation and prayer, when we are engaging with other people, how we treat other people, the lessons we learn from other people, the lessons that we teach them. That's Masonry.
What did you call that exercise where you talked to the different lodge officers?
Well, we started off talking about the chamber of reflection, and I think this is just a more expanded version of the chamber of reflection. It's a little more interactive. So I think what Chuck was saying in his book was he's taken the concept of a chamber of reflection and expanding that to the lodge, and taking into account what is the symbolism of the officers of the lodge. And so when you're having this conversation with officers, you're really having a conversation with yourself. But it's a practical way of learning or teaching these contemplative or meditative practices. that's essentially what a chamber of reflection is designed to do. But again, it just enhances the experience for those that are not used to a chamber of reflection, or they're not used to meditation. It just enhances that experience and kind of gives them a kind of drop them in the deep end a little bit of, hey, this is what's there. And I've never heard one negative thing from brothers. I mean, I've seen brothers shaken up by it, but never heard anything negative.
When you did this, now it's like you say, it's like 10 minutes you get to go in there and do this. So if you have, I don't know, 20 people who want to go through this, you're talking several hours for this to be it's sort of an all, everybody shows up and you're just waiting for each person to go through it on their own, and then you talk about it outside while you're waiting. Or what are you doing hanging out waiting while Matt's in there?
So the way we do that is we break up the group. When we do the inner chamber program, we limit it to 15 brothers. That's it. Just because it is meant to be a more intimate experience. And just like you said, if you have too many brothers, it's not realistic to do that. But then we just break them up into groups of 5. So one group of 5 will be going through that exercise while another group is attending a class on theurgy. Another group might be at lunch, and then we just kind of rotate through, and then we get them all done by the end of the day, but nobody's just sitting around waiting.
But I do want to go ahead and thank Brother Parker for his wonderful talk. It was really interesting. This is exactly the sort of stuff that we're looking to do. These unstated meetings have been about, is to reach into the esoterica of Masonry and get more in depth with what Masonry is about. I think we've achieved more, if I can humbly say, in this little Zoom meeting. These Zoom meetings, we've had about 35 of them. And when I go back and just look at the titles of the topics we've covered, I think we touch on things in these meetings that I haven't heard in most Blue Lodges, let alone other research lodges, that we really get into some interesting stuff. So it is worth it. If you haven't seen them, go check out our YouTube channel and watch the other Zoom meetings because there's some really great stuff there over the years. And at some point, I'll try and maybe whittle it down, because each of them are like an hour and a half, 2 hours long. Maybe take highlights and put them together in shorter parts. I don't know where we're going with that. If you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That always helps us out, helps us grow. I put the links earlier to join our Facebook group. I did want to promote, if I could, the next couple of meetings. February 4th is Freemasonry in the colony of Virginia in the 1800s. That's with Brother Brendan Kine. We'll be speaking about that, how in Australia, the colony of Victoria was established and what Masonry had to do with the early years there in Australia. That was interesting. I noticed Brother Graham isn't here. We normally have our Australian brother tunes in at like 1 a.m, and he's here for our meetings, so he's not with us today. And then February 18th, as I mentioned earlier, Brother Jason Hicks will be speaking about a prolific North Carolina Mason, J. Raymond Shute, who in the 1930s founded the North Carolina Lodge of Research, as well as quite a number of other Masonic bodies, including the Allied Masonic Degrees, the Knight Masons of Ireland, Knights of the York Cross of Honor. J. Raymond Shute did a whole lot of work in North Carolina in the 1930s. He established a whole number of Masonic research and other appendant bodies. And that will be on the 18th of February. So we have a lot of good stuff. So for all of our guests, again, thank you, Brother Parker. Does anybody have any parting shots before we shoo all of you out of here and just have the officers stick around for a meeting? Brother Robert, you want to say anything to the group as our worshipful master?
It was definitely, it made listening to Brother Parker.
Yes.
Listening to him, looking at the philosophical, the aspect of what Masonry really can be, very interesting. Never thought of my ego as that veil, but that kind of, it can get in your way of trying to find out what it is that you really are here for, whatever it is, but Masonry particularly. And he made a comment about not being a master mason, that we're really not. Well, most lodges, from my understanding in the beginning, were always held in an apprentice degree. They were not, it was not the master mason's degree. And the reason that some jurisdictions went to the master masons, it was to try to keep the interest in masonry going on. So if you wanted to get more, they'd say, well, there's another degree that you have to go through, and then there's another degree, which, you know, what was the motive of that one? So, but initially, lodges were just held on the entered apprentice, from what my understanding was.
Actually, you're absolutely right there. In fact, North Carolina, Virginia, mostly around the southern U.S., most jurisdictions only open on Master Mason degree. But believe it or not, we're in the minority. The majority of Masonic jurisdictions in the U.S., Canada, Europe, around the world, they routinely open on the entered apprentice degree. So yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's just it seems to be more of a Southern thing, really, that we do that.
You know, it would some brother would cynically said, "Well, I guess they wanted the money. The lodges wanted the money to come in, so that was the way they kept people going." You know,
Some truth to that. I like the analogy, Robert, of the ego being the bulldog you're trying to train and it's unleashed. I think that's much easier to relate to. I go through that with my B-Bull Grievous. He likes to go where he wants to go, and it's a constant. I do get a good workout for my wrist and lower arm strength of constantly tugging on him to keep him in line.
and I would definitely like to do. You know, he was talking about the chamber. When I did it, it had the skull, the crossbow, but it really, I did not get a lot of what he is, and I kind of felt cheated. That I would have loved to, instead of them giving me, oh, you've got 15 minutes in here, and that's it, and then we're going to start this degree. It's like, okay. I didn't really get it. I'd love to go back over that and do also the chamber with the officers.
Yeah, you were raised at Winchester Lodge?
Yeah.
Winchester Harbor? And they did. I didn't think Virginia allowed the chamber of reflection. I think that's what.
Chamber of reflection was, if I remember, Commandery in Virginia. It's in Commandery.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And and it was just, those orders. It was interesting, but yeah, it would be interesting to go back and really have some contemplation there more.
Yeah, we should have a refresher chamber of reflection for all Masons.
Yes.
Make that available. I think that'd be really cool. Well,
yeah, it would be.
I understand that's one of the reasons, going back to the observant lodges, and why Brother Hammer and Alexander Washington Lodge ran afoul of the Grand Lodge with wanting to do a chamber of reflection, and they were told they're not allowed to. And I don't quite understand that, because it's not forbidden by the Methodical Digest. And as I look at it, if the Blue Lodge, if you're following what's in the Methodical Digest and you're not doing anything that's strictly outlawed by the Methodical Digest, you should be allowed to do it. But that gets into a whole discussion with the
Grand Lodge's
opinion towards observant lodges. So I tread carefully when bringing up that topic, but that's kind of how we are. Any other brother, anything to offer before we wrap this up? Because it is 11:40 now. I do appreciate Brother Parker. Great talk, and I think it was a good discussion. I appreciate everybody contributing. Anyone else? Again, if you're watching this on YouTube at some point in the future, when I get around to uploading this, and I know I'm behind, and I'll try to get those done, please like and subscribe, and join us on Facebook. I'll put that out there. So, anyone else? All right. I want to thank my lovely co-host, Brian Smith. As always, an outstanding job.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Well, if you're not a member of Virginia Research Lodge, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in 2 weeks, I hope. You'll take